this pain that I can't describe. I would rather you broke my leg. The pain of wanting to die is a pain that I would never want to feel again. So nothing can get worse than what I've already been through.
Stephanie first attempted suicide at the age of 14. It took a year and more attempts before she received help and was quickly prescribed antidepressants.
It made me more suicidal. It made me really struggle, which I didn't realise at the time. I just thought it was the trauma and blamed it on all that, but it was a rapid decrease in my mental health as soon as I got put on it. I really struggled, I couldn't cope anymore, I didn't want to be alive, I felt everything was against me. My head was just so messy because of this medication. And it's not even meant to be prescribed to children, it's an adult medication. It just made me feel horrible and I didn't want to be alive anymore. Hoping for that magic cure, I was taking them, but didn't want to because they weren't working. So I was kind of stuck on wanting this magic cure. I don't want to wake up tomorrow wanting to die again, but these medications are making me feel worse. It was a catch-22.
And looking back, how do you feel about being prescribed that medication as a teenager?
I'm sad and really, really worried for children of the future. As a child, you can't speak up for yourself. You don't know how to articulate your thoughts and what you're thinking. I have been labelled as having a personality disorder. I was labelled as psychotic and erratic. It was all trauma, and I didn't know how to articulate that. I do think that it works for some people. Some of my friends are on antidepressants and they live amazing lives and they're doing amazingly, and it really does help them. So I believe they do work, but not without support and not without another talking therapy or another person there to talk to. If you are struggling with your mental health to the point where you may need medication, then you have to deal with that trauma, and medication can't be prescribed alone, but it is.
Antidepressants can be prescribed to children and young people under certain circumstances for a range of conditions such as depression and obsessive-compulsive disorder. Last year they were prescribed to more than 20,000 children and young people aged up to 19. That's an increase of more than 80% in less than a decade. However, in that time it has almost trebled among 10 to 14-year-olds and almost doubled among those aged 15 to 19.
She was an extraordinary girl from the get-go.
She was funny, she was loving, she was intelligent, and she was just so much fun to be around.
From the age of 10, Josh's parents noticed she was experiencing bouts of anxiety and depression.
The first thing they did was prescribe her an antidepressant at 12. Fluoxetine was the first drug that they put her on. She was against this because she didn't like what they did to her. She said herself, they kind of took her spark away. As soon as she showed some kind of objection to this, they kept changing the drugs and put her on various other antidepressants. And, we trusted them. We had no idea. We thought they knew what they were doing. There is no magic pill. That's a Band-Aid covering a wound. That's not solving anything. We worked our way up through various levels of psychiatry at the place there until we got to the head psychiatrist, who literally threw his arms in the air and said, "We have nothing left in our armory for her." And she was there. And I don't know what they thought would happen when they said that, but that must have been devastating for Joshie to say there's no help available. So, at that point, not long after that, she began self-medicating, and one thing led to another, and she became out of control.
Joshie's parents believe a lack of effective treatment led to her death. Guidelines say fluoxetine should only be offered to a child or young person in combination with psychological therapy.
We wouldn't oblige somebody to take a talking therapy if they were unable to or they felt strongly they didn't want it. But certainly we do follow those guidelines. Young people are not prescribed medication as the first option for treatment. And if they are, then the preparation for treatment, the screening for physical conditions and other vulnerabilities, the attempt to make sure that it's embedded, if not in a talking therapy, at least in very regular monitoring and review, would convince you that it's far from being a shortcut.
The COVID pandemic has put increased demand on mental health services. At the end of September last year, almost 2,000 children and young people had been waiting more than a year for treatment from specialist child and mental health services. That's more than double from the previous year. Between July and September, only 78% were seen within the Scottish Government's waiting time target of 18 weeks from referral to treatment. Ministers say they've invested £40 million to improve child mental health services and to clear waiting lists by March 2023. They're also working with health boards to ensure targets are met and have provided extra funds for alternative treatments within communities.
It never, to me, ever struck me that she had severe mental health problems.
Annette was unaware her daughter Brittany was prescribed beta blockers for anxiety at the age of 16. 2 weeks later, Brittany overdosed and died.
I didn't know what she had properly until I actually looked the medication up myself. And then I went and met with the practice manager of the doctor's surgery that Brittany attended. And she broke down a little of what they actually were.
Annette is challenging the fact children aged 12 and over can give informed consent to their GP in private.
I was able to do nothing until after the event, which it was too late. I would have liked to have seen her referred to a psychological service first of all, back for a follow-up appointment before any medication was given, just to see if that day maybe she could just been having an off day. I would have liked to have seen them maybe take a bit more seriously what she said to them that day.
Unlike beta blockers, antidepressants will only be prescribed to children and young people after seeing a specialist.
How common would you say their usage is?
Very, very common. And certainly in the last 10 years, we've seen a massive increase in prescribing. Serotonin reuptake inhibitors really only work along with additional therapies like cognitive behavioural therapy or general talking psychology. So as long as they're being used as prescribed and along with additional therapies, then they should be beneficial to a person's well-being.
Josh's parents are now campaigning for a more compassionate and flexible system of mental health treatment.
You can't cure mental illness, but you can understand it better and you can approach it compassionately and you can give people a better chance of recovery. More options need to be available. Mental illness is a complex thing. It's not a simple thing. And everybody's different. Everybody has their own solution to it. But there are solutions. But when you narrow the field, your chances of success are very, very small.
What do you wish had been different for you?
Oh, I wish I had a mate. I wish I had someone that used their own lived experiences to tell their story and to make me realise that it wasn't my fault. That all these reactions that professionals were labelling as troubled, psychotic, erratic weren't my fault. That it was because I'd been through an extreme amount of trauma so young. And I'm really, really lucky to have escaped the system and the cycle that I was in, and 4 years on I have a life that I never thought possible, and I'm so happy. And I just think it's incredible that after 20 suicide attempts I'm alive, because I shouldn't be in theory, but I got lucky somehow and I'm very, very glad that I did. And it just reinforces that suicide is preventable, but people need to get the right help because I almost never made it.